Hello everyone and welcome back to the Brightworks and another top level match of Beyond All Reason, or at the very least a match that includes quite a few top level players. How do you consider a top level match, right? Is it the number of top level players? Is it including a couple top level players? Let me know in the comments down below. Today we're going to be checking out a map that's a little bit of a meme map. Yeah, it's Hot Lips. Hot Lips, obviously named after this wonderful geographic feature right here in the middle of the map. Very beautiful and all. But also, I did notice that this map had this match rather, had a little bit of an interesting spawn location for our red and blue heroes. So, today spawning in the backline is an Armada commander going to be leading the blue team, a commander that goes by the name of Choice. A commander feared across the leaderboards for their 41 open skill silver chevron top tier play. Gonna be showing us what they've got in the backline right here on the northern side of this map. Now, mirrored exactly diagonally across the map in the exact same position, the red team leader, Pro Florio. 41 open skill as well, and going to be spawning in exactly identically the same position. I love these kinds of matches because usually they result in a yin-yang, and what I mean by that is that essentially if all of the skill for the red team is down here on the southern side, we expect this southern side to get pushed in quite harshly, also because of course we have 3 players here going to be going up against 2 players. We do also have the green player who's going to be pushing through this midsection right here, but yeah, essentially the way this map is balanced is the southern side is weaker for the blue team and stronger for the red team, and then vice versa for the blue and red. And then of course we have the blue lead over on the northern side, right? We have some experience up here as well. Evil Flame and Zoidy going to be fighting on this northern side here as well, going up against the brown player, Let Me Cook, Toxic Waste, and Ick, all on the lower side here of the red roster. Now, to be fair, open skill, not necessarily the end-all be-all measure of skill in this game. There's certainly a fair component of it that's a little bit random, right? You know, sometimes you lose a couple games and it's really not anything you can do about it. You lose some open skill and you fall down on the ladder. So that is to say that maybe some of these players at 26, 32, 25, maybe more experience under their belt than it would appear. Certainly a combination of reading the experience over here on the left-hand side, the experience chevrons, and then the open skill gives you a better read on exactly what this match ought to look like here. Now, as expected, already aggression coming across the map right here as a whole bunch of ticks are headed towards the main base of Bobby. Bobby going to be trying to defend against Pro Elmer Fudd in the Pro clan, apparently with Florio. These 2 teammates going to be ganging up right here on the green commander, who does manage to get a nice little surround on these ticks with the pawns right here. Always lovely to pick off these early scout units as much as possible, and nicely done. Not even losing the pawn means that those ticks will be deflected quite nicely. Another batch, though, of 5 ticks is ready to move on forward. There it goes, sprinting past the defensive line and trying to find an opening in the back line here. A little bit of an AFK maneuver right here, a APM stall, if you will. Meanwhile, a ton of grunts across the map as well. That Shuriken, obsessed with the one the one grunt right there. If it had spread its EMP beam around, might have found a little more value right now. But that's 5 grunts as well, looking to get some damage. The red team leading the charge here as far as aggression goes early on into this match, trying to find as much value as possible, trying to make sure that they take advantage of every single possible opportunity path that they can find, at least in the early game, before those LLTs get set up, before the units are out in mass, before there's really any effective counter. Shuriken here doing a wonderful job, though, of making this defense nice and easy, paralyzing the grunts that squeak through. Only a metal extractor and a radar tower go down right here in the early game, meaning, of course, that all this is deflected quite efficiently. As far as damage done, the blue team actually pulls ahead by 30%, 2.4k versus 1.9k. Going to be playing defense, but killing so many of those units so efficiently with the help of the Shuriken that it does mean that actually they're ahead as far as the damage numbers goes. The economy basically neck and neck right now, but the defense value is climbing here for the red team, I do see. That can be a blessing and a curse, though. That defense value going up does mean that there's less units on the field, right? As these LLTs come up and running, it means that less Rocketeers are firing away right here. And you can see that with 2 of them on the field, Elmer Fudd is already in a little bit of trouble here. Yeah, one of those LLTs fall that's just dead metal on the front lines now that the yellow commander has to find an efficient way to deal with. Rocketeers, so annoying to deal with if you're playing as bots against bots. They're basically the end-all be-all for static defense. Means that once those Rocketeers are out, there's not really anything you can do to stop them. Yeah, you have to go into units of your own, otherwise you're just not going to have the range. Another grunt run by over here. Oh, and they do manage to find a metal extractor. All said and done, all these grunts for a single metal extractor, not going to be worth it, but if it takes a while for that mech to come up and running, the downed metal extractor might have produced as much resources as all those grunts combined. So overall, depends on the micro, depends on the commander, but can be worth the trade. Zoidy and Evil Flame pushing forward right now against Let Me Cook, who does have a lovely force of grunts up here on the northern side. Looks like hasn't lost too many of them, and obviously that means that your snowball begins to grow a little bit quicker. Let Me Cook clocking in at 12, 12 open skill, but the silver tail chevrons, I believe this is 500 hours. I want to say that's 500. I believe the silver is 1,000. Basically what I'm trying to say is Let Me Cook doesn't have the highest open skill, but they definitely have some experience in the game. So, knows how to play this front line, knows what to do, knows to set up some of those LLTs to augment this force, and I'm expecting to see a transition towards some of those rocket bots a little bit later on. You can also play this with thugs, going into a big thug composition. Typically, though, thugs are great for when you're a little bit ahead to get further ahead. Sort of like we see right here with Wolverine, using those thugs to push into the LLTs and then just falling back to make sure that the pawns can't really take an efficient fight. Using the commander to repair them is wonderful micro here as well. This is actually a beautiful engagement right here for the Hot Pink commander. Using those thugs to blast down the LLT, damaging the commander whenever possible as well. It's a very slow snowball, but it does get up and running eventually, and once it does, there's not a lot you can do about it. Yeah, the Lavender commander, Twisted Demon, and Twisted Venom. Guess I need to practice my reading. Brightworks goes to reading school. The thugs doing a great job of blasting down this army right here. Twisted Venom without a real solution. One option you do have if you're going up against going up against bots is to go for some of that heavy laser tower encroachment, the heavy laser tower spam. Essentially, you build a build turret, you build a heavy laser tower, you build a build turret, you build a heavy laser tower, so on and so forth until you creep towards the enemy's front line, or even their base if you can really manage to pull it off. Venom here doing a decent job of thwarting these with the commander, though. Has to be careful, though. 28% left on that commander is not much, and those thugs do blast down commanders pretty easily. And it only takes a couple of shells for those thugs to get within range and get within the commander's kill box. Pawns march forward here, but the thugs are sturdy enough to withstand the barrage for just a minute or two. It means that most of them will survive. This is probably some of the better micro I've seen so far. Making sure to keep these units alive as long as possible. Now the beamer turret is up and running, though, and that represents a significant issue. Yeah, these thugs are not going to have an efficient way of pushing into that. We're going to need way more to snowball past the defenses, or we're going to need to switch into rocket bots so we can fire away and move and take this fight a little bit more efficiently. Meanwhile, speaking of rocket bots, Bobby has done a phenomenal job of encroaching on the yellow defense line here. We do have a couple of Dragon's Claw pop-up lightning turrets now taking some serious heat as those rocket bots do fire away. You have to be careful with those, of course. They can outrange the rocket bots. But once you have this many rocket bots on the field, it only takes 2 or 3 volleys in order to fully blast down one of those lightning turrets when they're exposed. It is worth mentioning that if they're in their tucked away shelled form like that, they're significantly harder to kill. Massive bombing run built up here by the blue player. I was curious what the blue player was going to be going for. Apparently the answer is about 1 million Stormbringers. Okay. T1 Armada bombers. Not very common because they're bad. They're very bad. Stormbringer bombers are notoriously bad, especially, I mean, just in direct comparison to the T1 Cortex bombers. They don't do as much damage. They cover a wider area, which means that they're basically better in really specific circumstances. If you need to take out a massive wind turbine farm, if you need to take out a large but thin armored army, like, oh, I don't know, a bunch of grunts or a bunch of ticks or goblins or anything like that, they can work out really well. This is a great use case for them here. We just have a bunch of shallow things here, and yeah, big old carpet bombing means that we connect. Now, I believe they recharge quite a bit quicker, too. That's another effective use case for them, is, of course, that you can spread their destruction across the battlefield a little bit better. With proper micro, they can definitely be dangerous, and especially in this many of them. How many do we actually have here? 24 in total, and I think it was probably a few more, but just, yeah, shot down by the defenses here, by the red team. There we go. Florio also going for air, but a little bit too slow on the draw, and just like that, Bombers get a massive connection with the main facility over here. What a hilarious back and forth. Bombers were built up by the red commander, scouted by the bombers of the blue commander, and obviously whoever pulls the trigger first is going to find more damage, and that's exactly what these bombers have done. Managing to tear down all of the energy production right here for Florio means, of course, that any follow-up is going to be quite difficult to contend with. There we go. Bombers strafing across the battlefield here, not hitting much of their mark on these early rocket bots. Anti-air tower trying to chip away at these bombers as much as possible. For the time being, these Stormbringers need to find some value. Hilarious back and forth bombing from the blue and red commanders. I bomb you, you bomb me, and we'll call it just about even. We do have more fighters coming out right now trying to shoot down those bombers. Of course, while the fighters are engaged with the bombers, though, the defensive fighters here for the maroon commander are going to have a field day blasting them down. And so just like that, the fighters are shot out of the sky, meaning there's still a couple of bombers remaining to deliver their payload. 1, 2, 3, and 4 bombers still up and running and connecting wherever they can. The micro in these has potential, right? There's huge... Why are they so slow? I don't know what's going on with these bombers. For some reason, they're going Ridiculously slow. What is happening here? How did... Okay. Definitely a glitch of some sort. These bombers are stuck in slow motion. Very odd. Huh. I have no idea if that was a micro trick or if that was some sort of glitch. I am going to caution a guess that it was some sort of bizarre glitch because I have never seen bombers do that before. Big old pawn run by right here. A lovely maneuver from Bobby. Sniffs out that there's actually nothing defending this high ground right here. Since the defense has been pushed back for Elmer Fudd using these Rocketeers, it means that the pawns are more than happy to run forward and try and catch whatever they can. Little do they know there's a bunch of Rocketeer or Aggravator reinforcements over here. If we could snipe those down, it would actually be a phenomenal move. Joining up with the Brethren forces right here, both of the green armies converging on the forward vehicle lab, and just like that, Zero Renegade is blasted out of this front line using just a bunch of pawns and Rocketeers. Nicely done right here from the green armies. Meeting up in the middle and doing a combined effort means that their attack is going to be much more efficient. Agitator set up on the high ground is quite annoying too. Obviously with its high arc mode means it can hit just about anything in this radius. A couple of Rocketeer have been sent over in this direction to try and shut it down. That heavy laser tower for defense, though, is going to be quite sturdy. LLT here contributing significantly, and with the thugs for reinforcements, this attack has petered out completely. Rocketeer is now well dealt with. That Agitator has more than enough time to fire away at anything that it wants. Bobby's front line is looking phenomenal right here. Elmer Fudd pushed back so far that there's not really much of an economy to sustain the yellow commander. Maybe if we had this Geo up, it would have given us about an extra 6 metal per second that could have kept us in contention with the green commander here, but it's not the case. And so it does look like this southern side has managed to win. So the blue team winning multiple front lines all over the place. I expected a completely different turn of events here, with the red team winning the southern side and the blue team winning the northern side. It turns out the blue team is just winning every side. Compound 116, the powder blue commander here on the front line, looking phenomenal. We have T1 medium tanks rolling out of a forward laboratory and just pure economic expansion growing in the back line right here. This is lovely stuff. This is Armada wet dreams. This is what we're hoping for as an Armada commander. Getting those wind turbines, those very cheap wind turbines up and running in the back line, using E-converters to make them into metal, and then of course continuing the aggression with some of those tankier T1 stouts. The Seafoam Green and the Cyan Commanders both moving in tandem on this northern side. It is a lot of skirmisher bots, and the ticks are exceptionally good against those in certain circumstances. Pawn's going to be quite decent here as well. It all depends on how many and how much room you have to operate and maneuver. These units with very little are going to be blasted out quite nicely here. The Brown Commander trying to move into position to do something about it. Shuriken here going to try and mop up the rest of this. A little too late, though. If these had showed up when those ticks and when those pawns had arrived, they would have been able to paralyze all this, and they could have gotten a fabulous trade. Still not the worst thing in the world, though, as these grunts are now swarming out of the labs right here for the Brown Commander, and with a little reclaim from the Commander on the front line, it looks like all of this will barely be held on the fronts. Is this an overextension of Evil Flame's Commander? I don't think so. I don't think we have a way to kill this Commander. Certainly very annoying, though. The Commander is forced into a retreat. The reinforcements are going to have to trickle out very slowly, and we need some sort of frontline unit. We need Centurions, we need Thugs, we need Maces, we need Grunts, Goblins, anything like that. I guess I keep including Goblins. I'm more and more including Legion in these commentaries as much as possible, just to kind of, you know, pump the gas on that a little bit. Obviously not trying to pressure the Legion devs into, you know, moving faster, but I'm just very excited for it. Janus tanks, that's the T1 Scout spam light bot, by the way, the Goblin. It's the Legion spam bot. Janus tanks finding a phenomenal engagement over here, managing to tear apart, well, just about everything the Tan Commander has to build. The Janus missiles, they hit hard. No matter what they hit hard. LLT is certainly a valid target, just like that, blasted down in one volley with a little bit of Centurion firepower. Love the inclusion of the Centurions here. They're sturdy enough to hold up with the tanks as far as the health pool goes. They're also an excellent tool for dealing with commanders and any of these early spam units. Centurion, some of the most efficient anti-spam bots in the game for the T1 era. Obviously quite expensive, but for that expense you do get a fabulous unit out of it. Ick with the Killer D gun right there, manages to carve apart one of those tanks, manages to catch the Centurion too. Oh, but not before the Janus missiles rock that commander's socks off, and just like that, the 22 open skill hero commander, Ick, does go down on the front line. Compound 116 looking pretty rough here too, though. 3% remaining on that blue commander, with the green forces leaking in on the southern side and an economic benefit of 30% or more. The blue team is looking phenomenal in this game. Can we make up the difference with a little bit of a T2 push right here? Wolverine has been handed a bunch of metal in the form of a run-by over here. LLTs have managed to spare everything on this northern side, and it looks like we ate up that Gauntlet, Agitator. in favor of going for a T2 lab. Fabulous maneuver right there from the Hot Pink Commander. It's a move that I always tell people to go for, but oftentimes I feel it's neglected. We see 4, 5, 6 gauntlets on the front line, and no T2 yet. It's, you know, 2 of those pays for your T2 lab, so always important to remember the cost of putting those static defenses down, especially when they're not finding value anymore. Meanwhile, my goodness, just take a glimpse of this economic growth right here. I mean, really, the pretty HUD doesn't really do much justice for how much expansion we have going on. Massive expanse of wind turbines being built by a whole bunch of different constructor turrets, constructor bots, air constructors, all sorts of stuff, trying desperately to get those wind turbines up and running. All Armada is so all worth it, and 25 maximum wind speed and 5 minimum wind speed. Those wind turbines are brutally efficient. Definitely Cortex commanders punching the air, wishing that they had access to those very, very nice, efficient, cheap wind turbines. Clean energy, if nothing, it's Armada's mainstay. Hound's now rolling out of the laboratory here. Resbot eating up a bunch of these T1 corpses. Recycling is the name of the game, and nobody does it better than Resbots here. They're the fools that that yell at you for, you know, not recycling your garbage properly. You know, putting the oil stained cardboard in the regular cardboard recycling bins, all that sort of stuff. That's what the Resbots do. I like to imagine them as the garbage facility workers, sorting through the trash and making all the usable stuff usable once again. Just pretty brutal when they get involved in combat and start disassembling things bolt by bolt. Anyways, Thugs and Rocketeers, still one of the last remaining T1 battlefields on the front lines here. Zero Renegade resurrecting a lot of this, but frankly speaking, I think Reclaiming is probably going to be the way to go. We're about ready to transition into T2, and I think the Orange Commander knows it, looking for one big, good engagement with these vehicles, wants to reclaim as much of that army as possible, and then make a very sudden shift into T2. I think that's exactly the plan right here for the Orange Commander, while meanwhile we have a full-blown T2 army. Well, actually, this is mostly T1, moving on the southern side. We do have a jammer included here, which is quite nice. Jammers can turn the tides of even a T1 battlefield, as strange as it may sound. Allowing those Rocketeers to fire from the cover of a jammed field does mean that they're going to be in a good way. My goodness, the Pawn Swarm. When in Rome, make 1,000,000 units like the Romans do, and just like that, the Pawns have pushed forward, breaking the lines right here and allowing for the the yellow troops to push forward into the green forces. Did we do enough damage, though? You know what? It was kind of a bold-faced attack, but all said and done, it didn't really result in all too much destruction, at least as far as these rocket bots are concerned. Sheldon going to be quite nice once they hit the battlefield in numbers, but we don't quite have them yet. The Hot Pink Commander continuing to push back. Zero Renegade getting that engagement that he wanted, and with all this reclaim, going to be more than happy to switch on over to a T2 lab. I expect to see it any second. There's the constructor that we're going to use, and there's the T2 lab. Perfectly done by our orange hero. Pink Commander going to be, actually taking down this front line here quite nicely as well. With the help of those Shurikens, those early T1 units are having a phenomenal time tearing down a whole bunch of those tanks. Getting a Resbot or two over there is going to be perfect for eating up a bunch of that wreckage. You can see 1,000 metal here, a couple thousand here. Going to be wonderful for making sure that all of this stays nice and well built. Mesa's standing within range of the Dragon's Maw pop-up flamethrower turrets. Not exactly ideal. Those flamethrower turrets do phenomenal DPS for at least the T1 era. Sheldon now shelling away from the high ground here, going to be going up against their arch nemesis, the Hound. 650 range versus 850, though. It's an obvious clear-cut advantage for the Hound, costing 410 metal versus 300 metal. I guess that's, about a third range increase for a third price difference. Northern side looking in a rough way, though. Hound's pushing forward with the accompaniment of a couple of pawns means that they have a little bit more vision, a little bit more mobility, a little bit more chutzpah when dealing with some of these light laser turrets. Switching these into their Gauss mode wouldn't be the end of the world, though. Just helps them deal with some of these faster moving targets a little bit better. All said and done, though, this is not a good-looking engagement for the Hounds, as they get caught by the pawns and will be blasted to smithereens by their rapid-fire Gauss plasma cannons. More like plasma submachine guns, it feels like. Yeah, they're kind of pew 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 pew, not really daka daka daka. Still T1 right here for Twisted Venom. Yeah, Sheldon gonna hurt pretty badly now. It's time we start transitioning out of this T1 army. We do have a T2 lab coming up right here. You know how we could pay for it, of course, is by eating up this T1 army. A lot of these units are already low health. Resbot, construction turret, rather, trying to remedy that. But, of course, one of the better options is just to eat this army up. I mean, if we just select all this real quick. Just 1 second if we select all this. There's 3,000 metal right there. There's your T2 lab and T1 units right there. Obviously, eating up your front line of units. Not ideal if you feel like you're going to be pushed, but of course with the static defense, it does mean you have a little bit of time that you've bought yourself. Spybot in position for the boldest move of all time. Resbot's going to detect it, though. Ooh, ever so slightly, those Resbots do detect it, and it's enough. Oh, Bobby tried to save it with a self-destruct, but not in time. Rocketeers blasted down, and it does mean that the Green Commander loses the opportunity to paralyze just about basically everything in the yellow contingents right there. T1 medium tank still rolling out of the lab for the powder blue commander. The thing about medium tanks is they can still do decent work against some of those T2 units. Meanwhile, T3 is already up and running, and my goodness, it's on basically a T1 economy. Mass wind turbine here for the blue commander. Obviously going to suck when that wind speed drops, but while the sun is shining, make hay we shall. Just like that, the blue commander pumping out a bunch of those Marauder out of a T3 lab as quickly as possible. And quickly it is. My goodness, those Marauder coming up at about, what is that, 30 seconds a pop? No, less than that, 5 seconds a pop, depending on the E-stall here. Maybe closer to 10, 15, depending on how much production there actually is here. But my goodness, these wind turbines have been bizarrely effective right here, showcasing the Armada wind efficiency to a perfect T. Frontline pulled right here for the Orange Commander, going to start an engagement against a lot of these T1 vehicles, but also managing to jump on top of some of those Hounds. Not quite enough forces, I think, here to overwhelm the defenses and the units. Certainly a nice battle, though. Does leave a lot of wreckage to be reclaimed, and whosoever manages to reclaim all that, looks like the Powder Blue Commander is going to be in for a lovely time. 2,000 or so metal going back to the lab is going to be quite a few of those Hounds, or, of course, a T2 transition, which I think, yeah, we have already completed. We just need to get some units up and running. Mauser going to be pumped out of the lab right here. 820 range is very close to the Sheldon. Did those get a buff recently? I felt like the difference was bigger. Bombers missing their target ever so slightly here. Still, though, a wonderful carpet bombing. Beautiful, if nothing else. And now these bombers are headed directly towards the green base. Build power goes up in smoke right there as the hail of bombs falls out of these Stormbringers' bomb bays and directly into the lap of the Green Commander. Bunch of these bombers doubling back right now to try and pop the laboratory, or maybe not. A little bit of miss micro right there. There we go. The wind turbines fall right now, though, for the Green Commander. And these bombers are moving on out to try and find some more targets. A couple of them scouting out the base right here of the Lavender Commander, and my goodness, what a bombing run. Mass Stormbringer. You can see they do basically no damage, but when you have about a sun-blotting out's worth of them, yeah, they'll do some decent work. There we go. Dropping their payload onto that fusion reactor. Oh my goodness, they still didn't manage to kill the fusion reactor. You see what I mean as far as these bombers being very, very poor against single targets. Much better at destroying a wide area of effect. And you know what's a wide area that might be perfect? This big wind turbine farm in the northern sector over there. Bombers doubling back and trying to find whatever targets that they can. Surprised we didn't go after the T2 lab, but I guess the anti-air here is thwarting a lot of that. T2 fighter in the air as well, putting in work, trying to shoot as many of these down as possible. Going in for the AGO. Do we have enough to pop it? I don't believe so. I think we need about 10. Yeah, we're very close here, but these T2 fighter are going to be more than effective enough at shooting down these bombers that they will be now well dealt with. Bobby has the comeback mechanic. It's EMP bombs. Boom goes the Spybot directly in the center of this massive composition of Hounds. Second one is revealed here, and even further in manages to get a lovely connection. Yellow Commander, though, not to be outdone, does have the Spybot here available. Will it be micro properly? Oh, and it manages to land the connection. Despite Bobby having the anti-stealth detector, still gets overwhelmed by the Spybot. It's a tricky thing, right? Because it reveals where the Spybot is, but doesn't necessarily allow your units to fire at it automatically. So it means that you have a bit of a strange situation, yeah. What a mess this battle ended up being. A bunch of T1 just sprinting headfirst into all these T2 Hounds. Looks like a Commander went down. Oh, the Orange Commander all the way over here. My goodness, quite overextended the Orange Commander was. Maybe trying to sneak past or some such, but either way, the Commander will be blasted down either way. And Uncle Bad Touch, the Green Commander, will be more than happy to eat up a whole bunch of that metal. Meanwhile, how about Marauders in your backline? Never a good situation to be in. Yeah, Phil RS5. Is it Rainbow Siege 5 or something? Rainbow 6? I don't know. The Maroon Commander here with a lovely set of D-guns on these paralyzed Marauder. Abductor, one of the few things that can clean up these T3 run-bys fairly efficiently. Northern Command taps out of the game, though. That's the, I believe it was the pink commander, the light pink commander taps out of the game right there as these Marauder devastate the base up there, as well as all of the E-converters. With all that gone, this northern land is ripe for the reclamation here for the blue team. Resbot's already patching up and piecing together all the scraps from that devastation. These abductors trying desperately to deploy things to the front line. We have picked up our commander's base. We have a load of construction turrets and towers and all sorts of other stuff. I love the idea of deploying these around the battlefield. Like, that's actually not a bad idea. Using those abductors to put beamer turrets around and all sorts of other stuff to shut down spam waves and things just takes a lot of APM, takes a lot of individual micro to accomplish that. So oftentimes we see that a little bit neglected. Tick's running forward, though, and trying to find some value. We also have all these hounds trying to get a good angle. Oh, nuclear bomber manages a connection, almost kills its own commander, but does manage to wipe out, at the very least, all of those units. T2 forces finally kill Uncle Bad Touch on the front line right here, as well as these engagements on the southern side. Somehow the green commander throwing away an entirely paralyzed yellow army and losing it all in just a numbers game on this southern side. Vastly overwhelmed by the production here of the yellow commander. Every volley's a dead hound, and shortly it will be a dead laboratory too. Wow. Boom goes the laboratory, just a single volley like that. The build power here shortly follows afterwards. The southern side now in shambles. At the end of the day, we did eventually get to that game that I expected here, with the southern side collapsing the economy of the blue side, and then of course the northern command pushing forward on that half. Air forces desperately needed to shoot down these abductors. They're trying so hard to shoot them down, but those abductors are actually quite sturdy. The anti-air missiles on those Marauder putting in some work here as well. Not a lot, but a little bit of work over time, and it does add up eventually. Abductor's not free either, so of course losing those definitely hurts. Nuclear bomber connecting with as many of these hounds as possible is always nice. Ticks here causing loads of problems, though, for Themby, the purple commander, trying to clean this up before they get too far into the backline. Welder's being spammed out right now. The green laboratory is wonderful. Obviously, Welder's going to be quite fabulous against a bunch of those ticks. Going to be sturdy enough to hold up against the light barrage from the hounds here as well, though. Anti-air truck accompanying all this means that the fighters will be shot down. Meanwhile, Marauder continuing their rampage. Wind turbines are funny because they're so fickle. As soon as they start to pop, you lose so many thousands of energy production. And the red team is suffering that immensely right now. Hound's also sneaking into the base right here, waddling around the maroon commander. Managed to pop some of the build power right there, crippling the build economy right here for Phil RS5. Gunships in the air trying desperately to clean all this up. A couple of killer D-guns right here from the maroon commander will wipe away most of the wreckage, unfortunately. But at the very least, cleaning up those aggressors from the main base here is going to be lovely, making sure that the Phil doesn't have to tap out of the game here. Abductor continually spammed out to try and save this front line right now. Southern side, nicely saved. Yeah, gunships up in the air, Roughnecks, the T2 Armada plasma machine gun ship. Rapid fire air-to-ground plasma guns, yeah, so they fire essentially the same weapon as a pawn. However, the distinct difference being these bad boys can surround things much more effectively, right? They get essentially a perfect surround no matter what they engage. It means that they have a fabulous time of just going ahead and tearing apart any units that otherwise pawns might look a little bit worse against. If you get a good surround with pawns, though, they will do effectively the same thing as the Roughnecks. Oh, fighters looking for that bomber. Oh, they want it. They didn't find it, though. Yep. Fighters desperately looking for that bomber, but they didn't find the bomber that went and hid over in the corner. Oh, but these ones did. A couple of T1... Oh, no, those are T2 fighters. High-wind T2 stealth fighters do manage to snipe that nuclear bomber out of the skies. A couple thousand metal down the drain right there for the blue commander, but at the very least... That bomber did get significant value. Yeah, taking out a whole bunch of those T2 hounds that were pushing forward. Highwind's now marching forward, trying to find some value. They do manage to pop a bunch of those abductor, which is always nice. It's the biggest problem right now for these Marauder. I would love to see about 1.5 million flak trucks sent forward right here just to accompany these Marauder. The Marauder could win the game if we just go ahead and send flak trucks to cover them. Right now, though, an army of them is being actually resurrected by the red commander. Lovely stuff. Yeah, big army of Resbots right here. It looks like about 30 Resbots patching together a whole bunch of these Marauder to try and hopefully get them up and running as a bit of a defensive force. Yellow Commander's been producing T3 for a good while here as well. Razorbacks, the hybrid form of the Marauder and the Razorback. No, the Marauder's running from the Razorbacks, as now these assault las machine gun, las minigun T3 titans of destruction start marching across the battlefield here. Razorback's very difficult to deal with. You need very specific T2 tools or you need T3 tools in order to deal with them. Sharpshooters, banishers, mammoth. Trying to think. Starlight, another good one. Basically all the high alpha damage units. And then of course T3 works decently as well, but Marauder's not necessarily the perfect choice here. Against an EMP'd Razorback, though, they're going to have a field day. Yeah, just like that, blasting that Razorback down pretty quickly. Brought from full health down to 0, but just a couple of those Marauder out. I believe that was these 5. 4,800 metal, shutting down 3,800 metal, so slightly inefficient, but if it works, it works, and mostly these are paid for by the reclaim here from the from the enemy team, so how mad can you really be? Economy's still looking about roughly the same, yeah. Slight advantage for the blue players or the blue team because they've been reclaiming ever so slightly more. Now that the T3 is rolling out in mass right here for the red team, though, it's going to be a matter of who can manage to reclaim more. You know what I think just might work? Another big bombing run. Yeah, going for a whole bunch of those bombers might be enough to actually push through the defenses right here. We've got 3 labs up and running. We've also got an APHIS coming up and running right here. I think it's overproduction for the blue commander. I think we could probably get away with 2 of these laboratories. Not the end of the world, of course. Yeah, maybe the blue commander agreeing right here goes ahead and eats up one of those laboratories to try and pay for some of this T3 advanced fusion reactor, but also keeping some of those labs around as we transition into bombers. Fighter patrol is significant enough anyways that we're going to be comfortable with going ahead and switching into bomber production, and of course those gunships on the front line can do wonderful work if they have the cover in order to do so. Unclaimed metal extractors down here, always difficult to reclaim these once your base has been completely annihilated, but it's always a good idea to send a constructor around just to try and reclaim them. You never know if you might pull it off, and those metal extractors pay for themselves relatively quickly. T2 fighters now sent across the field and going to start blasting their way through the red forces on the southern side. This is actually a fabulous trade. When you're ahead in air, it pays to continuously trade out to never let your opponent build up a significant air force. Much harder to deal with a big air force once they've been built into position, rather than dealing with the air force slowly over time. That goes double for ground forces as well. If you can catch the reinforcements walking out of a lab alone, rather than the main force of units, you can usually end up in a pretty sizable difference in efficiency. So much T2 anti-air here in the form of those Manticore means that all of those fighters will be shot down, though, and the Marauder find basically no purchase as the Razorback are in position. Excellent defense right there from the yellow commander, keeping a lot of these wind turbines alive and kicking. Now, it is about time that we start thinking about investing in T3 economy here, going for fusion reactors, going for some of that better stuff than the wind turbines. Don't get me wrong, the wind turbines are perfectly efficient, but it is going to cost a lot of space. Space that could be 100 APHISes, pumping out Titans per second, that sort of thing. Big Marauder push on the southern side, big Marauder push on the midsection of the map. We do have yellow Marauder that have been resurrected, apparently going to be marching forward with ones that were handcrafted in the yellow factories with love. Each one gets a smooch on its way out the door and headed for war. Didn't mean to make that rhyme, but, you know, it did, so it must be true. Lavender base that has been painstakingly rebuilt, now sent to smithereens right here by a bunch of Marauder. At the end of the day, the T3 will always come back for seconds. This is easy pickings for a bunch of these Marauder. Bizarrely APM stalled on the southern side right here. Elmer Fudd needs to get these into position. Too busy trying to micro these Razorback on the northern side. I say hand these over to one of these other players. Maybe hand it over to Phil. Maybe hand it over to Let Me Cook, who was up on this northern side. Let somebody else micro those units so your APM can be spent more efficiently. Just handing over a bunch of wind turbines, maybe a fusion reactor, all that sort of stuff. Way easier than having to micro multiple different armies around the map all at the same time, and essentially becoming inefficient because of it. Abductor here doing a wonderful job of paralyzing all these Marauder, keeping them in check, making sure that Themby is in position to degun as many of them down as possible. Beautiful deguns right there from Themby, easily done as the Purple Commander manages to mop up all of those Marauder without really too much difficulty. Meanwhile, Compound 116 in a little bit of trouble as the Assault Force right here, Marauder, now pushes forward. Yeah, that Lavender or Powder Blue Commander gets a degun off on one of those Marauder, but the other 4 managed to move forward on the middle front here on the map. Sharpshooter's now out and available. Sharpshooter is exactly the ideal unit for dealing with Marauder, dealing with Razorback, dealing with all this sort of stuff, so I love to see it. Including a couple of these in a composition of T3 units can actually lend your T3 a lot of support. their long-rangedness oftentimes better spent against those T3 units than it can be against T2. Effectively, they're the most efficient against T3. They're more efficient against T3 than some T3 units, whereas some T3 units are much more efficient against T2. Effectively trying to line up the right unit for the right composition. Oftentimes, that's the difference between winning and losing. Dangerous looking Shiva Ball right here on the southern side, though. We do have Razorback marching forward on the north. A vast economy right here for the Cyan Commander, looking to continue expanding everywhere, hoping to continue production right now. The Blue Commander continuing to produce out T3 units as well. Those Shiva, though, are laying down the law. Their long-range missile launchers very deadly against any static defense target. It's why they're a siege mech, not an assault mech. It's important to make that distinction. The Karganeth is your assault mech as a Cortex Commander. The Shiva is your siege mech, perfect for penetrating shielded wall bases or just really anything with any static defenses that you worry about. Anti-air Manticore, man, they suck, but in mass like this, I suppose they'll do the job. 8,000 metal worth of Manticore for a relatively pitiful anti-air defense. You can see it fires infrequently, it doesn't do very much damage, they tend to all overkill one target, but it is mobile, and that's really what you're paying the steeper price for. Wow, couldn't agree with the Red Commander more. These are all in a densely clumped together pack right here. These bombers finding basically the most efficient bombing run that you can possibly get. My goodness. When it comes to microing things against bombers, spreading them out is essentially the right way to do things here. Eventually, all of it's shut down by the Manticore, so I guess I can't complain all too much. Still, though, we probably could have seen about half the Shiva that went down right there staying up and on their feet if we had simply drag-clicked these in a nice big circle like this and just spread them all out in a nice wide open formation. Anyhoodle, the tick spam is now approaching forward as a whole bunch of grunts sprint forward too. Compound 116 in a little bit of trouble right now. Grunts detect that commander and start to surround it. Boom goes the powder blue commander, the not lavender commander, the powder blue commander. I keep reaching for lavender, that's not the right color. Brightworks learns colors. Razorbacks, there they are. I wondered where these went. I knew they were pushing the northern side. Apparently taking a little bit of a detour towards this forward T3 facility. Abductors, though. In the sky. Okay, neglecting their duties slightly here. There we go. Trying to paralyze as many of these as possible. Actually making this a very efficient fight. Ooh. One Razorback, one hero Razorback, trying very desperately, but doesn't manage to do it. The humble tick will save the day here. And that T3 facility actually stays up and online. More than that, though, most of these Razorbacks are resurrectable, so we can get those up and online and send them back towards the red team on that northern side. Might not be the worst idea here. Trying to utilize as much of that advantage as possible. T1 spam making the difference, though. You can see the blue team slowly losing that economic advantage as these grunts begin to waddle their way through. Razorbacks trying to clean up as much of this as possible. Oh no, pardon me. Razorbacks trying to destroy as much of this as possible. That's an orange Razorback now headed across. Zero Renegade in charge of this one. Going to be trying to blast down as many of these fusion reactors, wind turbines, and their eco structures as possible. Abductors desperately trying to paralyze this guy. They don't have a charge, though. There we go. Finally managing to paralyze that Razorback. Mere moments before it manages to kill the Aphis. Still might not matter, though. Those grunts are getting dangerously close to that facility. Shiva also within range, and boom goes the Aphis, taking out loads of E-converters, wind turbines, and other economy in their wake. Massive T3 battle right here. That Razorback will be blasted down eventually, but the blue team calls the resign vote. In come the bombers, now headed directly towards the red facilities. We have just a big wide open bombing run, I do believe so. Yep, just a big old carpet bombing run, looking to punch as big a hole in the enemy economy as possible, sending these bad boys across and hoping to get complete annihilation. Literally just rolled with unplayable Team Fairy Pog. About as toxic as it gets. That's the desperation of APM overflow. You start to run out of options, run out of things to micro, and you start leaking into chat. You gotta be very careful about that. That can ruin a game that's otherwise comebackable. You have to be very, very careful about that sort of thing. Anywho, though, the bombing runs have been phenomenal with those early Stormbringer bombing runs on the southern side here, and with the red team continuing the aggression for the entire time. With the red team continuing the aggression for the entire time. Surprisingly, they don't have the damage numbers here. They're at 1.9 compared to 2.0 million. Very close. The difference of 5% is nothing, and here we go. With the cursory follow-up bombing run, popping the advanced geothermal right there, and with the follow-up bombing run, probably going to be... Oh, so here's that glitch again. Yeah, these bombers are in, like, slow motion right now. Oh, so weird. So weird. It seems to be when they're on a cliff of some kind. They seem to have an issue. Huh. Well, there you go. Either way, heavy bomber is going to be more than sufficient to pop that advanced fusion reactor. Boom goes the eco right there of the Cyan commander, meaning that the laboratory will be shut off. At this point, the red team pulling ahead with an advantage of about 60%, more or less, dependent on the reclaim right here. It looks like we do have Resbots trying to patch things up. We do have reclaim going around all the while as well, trying to get as much of this up and running as possible. Shiva, so frustratingly bad against those T1 spams. This is the reason why you need those Karganeth, is of course because the Shiva will end up killing themselves just by firing away at their own toes. If you have to go up against a big spam like this, well, as long as the spam is microed forward. These are on a fight command or an attack command, which means that they'll stop right here. The Shiva won't actually kill itself firing at these. But the ones like the orange one here, where they run really close to the Shiva, they will end up going down. The red team looking for an opportunity to close this game out, and I think the one that they're going to have is going for another follow-up bombing run. Air forces have been significantly diminished right here for the blue team. A lot of that air defense has been knocked out. There's a lot of vulnerable opportunities here. We have the purple base, which is exposed from the southern side, and it looks like the grunts are going to be headed in that direction. The Razorbacks now marching northward here for the yellow commander Elmer Flood, going to be trying to find an opportunity there as well. Sharpshooters trying their very best, but the commander has not enough energy to fire them. Oh, that's a bummer. Zoidy with the sharpshooters, but not enough energy, means that the sharpshooters are effectively wasted metal. So unfortunate, because these bad boys can definitely pop down those Razorbacks real quickly. E-converters continuing to melt, though. It only takes a couple of grunts to actually find an exposed weakness here. There we go. Abductor does manage to paralyze a bunch of these, but my goodness, those grunts have still managed to find a tremendous amount of value. Razorbacks finding their opportunity path. They punch straight through into the purple base. E-converters pop, fusion reactors go up, and all the build power falls. Just like that, the abductors come over here, but it's a little too late, as already all that economy has gone down. The purple player and the blue team in general starts to lose their grip on this game. Yeah, from an overwhelming oppressive advantage to suddenly a massive comeback with those T3 Razorback. So efficient those T3 units are that it's almost impossible to keep up the fight with T2 unless you've already built a very specific composition. Love the abductors here, paralyzing as much of this as possible. They also lend something very critical, and that's vision. Allowing these units to actually see where they're shooting and firing away. Allows these abductors to connect their, or pardon me, allows these, what are they called? Shiva. Gosh. Allows the Shiva to connect their missiles right here. Not to mention, of course, an EMP unit can't really dodge out of the way of a missile that's headed towards it. Not that these Razorbacks are doing much dodging anyways. Themby calls a resign vote. Another one for the blue team. No retaliatory strikes on this northern side. I think this opportunity path has been forgotten about on this northern side here. Yeah, we've completely neglected that in favor of trying to just full out defend the southern side. Understandable, of course. You're trying to keep your base alive, trying to keep everybody alive. But 2 or 3 Shiva, maybe a couple of Marauder headed in that direction wouldn't be the worst idea. Already, though, with this many Abductor, it's going to be really hard to find much purchase at all. Those EMP transports, so oppressive. Difficult to get anything past them, and indeed, the blue team doesn't see a way out of this game. GG is called as the red team manages to take victory in this game beyond all reason. What a wild back and forth right there between these two teams, and an excellent resolution. Phenomenal abductor play, too. I feel like we don't see that unit all too often, so it's refreshing to see that one get its chance to shine. Thanks a ton for watching, folks. I hope you'll join in on Tuesdays and Saturdays, where we do hold our live streams 12 to 4 PDT, and I hope you leave a like and a subscribe and all that good stuff that everybody likes to ask on this video, if you did enjoy it, of course. You can leave a dislike, too. I ran a test a while back and learned that that actually doesn't affect the video at all, so I appreciate either one. Either way, I hope you have a phenomenal rest of your day, and I will see you in the very next video of Beyond All Reason. Peace out, everybody.